time.
Wonderful.
Can you be?
Yeah, we got sound here. Everybody here too?
Look how enormous my head is. That's fantastic. It's almost as big as how I in real life.
Okay, there you can kind of see the crowd just a little bit.
Get the old classic you can respond.
Okay, so without too much further ado, it's my pleasure to introduce Dr. Stephen Llano. Dr. Llano is the Director of Debate and a Professor of Rhetoric at St. John's College. He has taught debate on, and do I have this right, 5 of 7 different continents?
Wow, that might be right.
Yeah.
I'll have to get my fact checker on that.
He is a world traveler and manages the blog site ProGymnasta. He's often commenting on world's debate format as well as different policy debate format. And as an added tip, Dr. Llano is originally from the DFW Metroplex. So he's boy done really good. Yeah. He's going to talk to us today about world's format debate, and I believe something about either Lacan or minding the gap, but it is my incredible pleasure to turn things over to Dr. Llano. So please join me in thanking him.
Thank you, North Texas. It's been a while. Actually, I was just there. Was it last summer, Brian, or 2 summers ago? I lost track of time, but I was just there. Love the campus. Love everybody I ran into. It was fantastic. And I'm sure you guys have better weather than we do. It's over. It's kind of overcast here, a little cold. It's starting to be spring here in New York City, but getting there. But yeah, my name's Steve. I've been involved in this format of debate, the world's format of debate, for about 5 years now. My first foray into it was in 2004. And I learned it by going to Eastern Europe to a debate workshop there. And this debate workshop, I had no idea what was going to happen. And when I got there, I saw this format that I'm about to teach you tonight. And I thought, what in the world is this? This doesn't look like any kind of debate that I have ever seen before. And it got me thinking, once I started learning how it worked, about the differences in format and the way format looks and feels to different people, and how format kind of changes a bit. And one of the things that I noticed immediately was, well, not immediately, but over some time thinking, was how moving from format to format allowed me to appreciate the ideology of the format, the things that come with it, the burdens that come with it. And so Brian's right. I prepared this thinking that there might be some familiarity with policy debate, and I've been thinking a lot about Lacan lately. And I don't know how much you guys know about Jacques Lacan, but one of the important people to him was a French linguist named Benveniste. Benveniste was a linguist who was studying language, and he found something he thought was interesting, which is that anytime you make a statement, such as, I'm going to teach you about world's debate, or I'm going to teach you this new format of debating, there's a gap. There's a hesitation, there's space between the I who's saying that and the I in the sentence. So when you say, I'm going to teach you about this, who am I referring to? Am I referring to some imaginary person? Or am I referring to myself, but I'm not really talking about the me who's making the statement? And I thought that was appropriate because Lacan uses this to create his theory of the gap, which is why we keep talking, which is why we keep trying to make sense with each other, which is why we're always trying to explain everything to each other, because we're trying to patch up the space between who I think I am and then the me that you get when I enunciate. And there's a bit of a hesitation, there's a bit of a space there. And so this format of debate was invented in Great Britain. If you've ever been to London and ridden on the Underground, I don't know if you guys have been to London. They always say, mind the gap. Mind the gap between the platform and the train. And it got me thinking about minding the gap. So when you study a debate format, you can see what the gap might be. And that's the second slide that I have here, questions that I think of, that I think are thinking about when you do format. So who's the person to be speaking? What can they say? And what can be known in what you said? Each format, you study a debate, it's limits on. Policy debate is what sort of wrote this as a comparison to. So I thought you guys might be more familiar with that. Does anybody have any experience in policy debate? You guys have experience in that?
A little bit.
Yeah,
Yes.
a little?
Yes.
Yeah, if you've seen it, or maybe you might have done it a little bit in high school, they call it cross-examination debate in Texas. That format is really popular in the US, and the reason for that is because it mirrors a lot of the way that we use the debate in our institutions. This format of debate mirrors the way that we use debate in British institutions. So there's a lot of differences. So on slide 3 here, the questions or the things that I think are most important to know about world's debate is this type of debate is not adversarial, it is competitive or cooperative. What I mean by that is that in most formats of debate you might be familiar with, the debate is about tearing the other side apart or making the other side of debate lose by picking out problems like. In world's format debate, the debate is cooperative. That is, there are 4 teams in the debate. I'm going to try my best to use the 4 teams. Let me see if I can manage this with Skype and see if you can see what I'm drawing. I don't have my good camera here today. I should have would have made life a little easier for me. But there are 4 teams in the debate, which might be kind of confusing. So you don't know if you can see that. Can you see that okay?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah? Okay, good. So I'll sit over here, maybe that'll make it easier for you to see. So there are 4 teams in the debate. I have them on slide 4 there for you in the handout. The opening government, opening opposition, closing government, closing opposition. So each one of these teams is trying to win the debate. 2 of them are in favor of the topic and 2 of them are against it. So you can't just really tear somebody apart and expect to win because there's another team on your side that's also going to be trying to win the debate. So with another team on your side that you're competing against, it changes the rules. What you have to do is instead of tear apart, you have to win by what do I offer, what thesis do I deploy, what argument did I contribute to the debate. That's how I'm going to win. The other thing is, in a lot of debate formats, one thinks that if you drop something, if you don't respond to something, then you're going to lose that point and you might lose the debate. It's absolutely not the case in World's WUDC, World's University Debate Championships. It's not the case there. If you concede something, it might mean that you're spending more time trying to be a little bit more in-depth on the other issues. So if there's a minor issue they bring up, you can just kind of dismiss it. Is that you might say, oh, they think our policy will be expensive. That's okay, the government spends money all the time, moving on. And that kind of a response would be called losing the debate in a lot of American formats. The other team would pick up a deal out of that. But since there's so many different teams, spending a lot more time on their positive matter is what they call it. There's a couple of debate terms that I use here from policy debate, parametrics, which means you take the motion, you try to make it smaller and more manageable. That's not permitted here. We call that losing the debate. What you try to do is make the biggest case you can. And you also defend the whole resolution. So there's whole res theory, policy debate, which is an older theory, and it has just left the country. It didn't really die. It's way over there, and they're thinking, yeah, if you don't provide a robust defense of the entire motion, you're probably going to lose the debate. So let's talk about what a round looks like. You have these 4 teams. Everyone gets a 7-minute speech. So if you will indulge my poor use of the board again. You and your partner are one of these teams, and you each get a 7-minute speech to defend the motion or to attack the motion. And everyone speaks in order, like this, opening, 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 opening. Just like that, back and forth like tennis. It goes back and forth with each side. And everyone speaks for 7 minutes just once. And your job, if you're a government team, is to support the motion. And if you're an opposition team, your job is to say the motion should be rejected in some way. And you only speak once. And that's the basics of it. There's also, will be, in the round, there'll be 3 judges. One of the judges will be the chair judge. They're the one who's in charge of the debate. They run the debate. And they will they will tell you when it's your turn to speak. They usually use a lot of formal language. They'll say, and now we'd like to recognize the leader of the opposition to speak for 7 minutes. Here, and everything claps. Okay, and that's a difference. Another difference is in this form of debate, people participating in debate will heckle. They're allowed to heckle. And that might terrify you at first, but heckling is no more than just knocking on the table if they think that they like your argument. So you might be making an argument, and your partner can say, yeah, this is good. They're not going to Or if you said something the other side thought supported their side, then they might knock for it too. But they would be foolish because you'd never say anything that support their side. There you go. It happens all the time. They'll knock to indicate that their argument is the argument that you're making. So that's the basic structure of it. It's very straightforward. And there's no correct times either. There are no timeouts and no hesitations or anything like that. So as soon as that first speech is done from the Prime Minister of the opening government, the next speaker gets up and talks. Okay, so there are only 3 rules in World's Debate. And that's on slide 5. Only 3 rules. The first rule, the most important, is your role. So each team has a role in the debate that they have to achieve. Their role is what they have to do to move the debate forward. What is it that they have to do to make the debate? Opening government's role is to say, here's what this debate is about. So you might get a motion, like later on in the slides I use the motion, this House believes that university education should be paid for by the state. So the opening government would say, what does that mean? Oh, you think it means that who wants to go to university qualified shouldn't have to worry about the financial matters behind that. That's what we think it means. So that'd be opening government's role, is define the debate, say what the debate is about, and then make the first arguments in favor of it. Opening opposition's job would be to say, we do not think this is a good idea. Here's what we stand on. Here's why we think it's a good idea. And here's some arguments against what opening government said. Closing government's job is to take the debate in a new direction. You're supposed to offer what's called an extension. And they move the debate in a direction. So if the top half of the debate, the opening government said, we think that this would be a good idea because it helps poor people. It would be bad for the closing government to say, we also think that it supports poor people in favor of that. It would be good for them to follow along because remember, they're trying to beat the opening government. They're trying to beat that team. Right? So each one of these teams is trying to beat other. It's not a side victory. The judge at the end will say, this team got a first, that got a second, this team got a third, that team got a third. 4 teams. And what you want to do is try to get 1 or 2. You don't want to be a 3 or a 4. So you're always trying to beat teams on both sides. So if you're closing government, try to offer something that's a little bit different than what the opening government did. You'd say, we think this makes for a better university environment, or something like that. And the closing opposition, the same burden. The last 2 speakers each side of the debate called the whip speakers, government whip and opposition whip. Their job is to provide a summary of the debate and explain who won the debate. And so that's everybody's role. Role is very important. If you don't, it's like a prerequisite winning the debate, I think. If you good, you don't provide role, you don't win. It's sort of the that you should have from that. Loyalty is the next one. If you're a closing team, you have to be loyal to your opening team. You can't say, well, opening government, they seem like good people. They seem very nice. There's no way that they could have predicted what this was going to be about. I'm sorry they screwed it up. We're just going to dismiss their argument, move along. You can't do that. You can't get reset. You have to stay loyal to your opening side. You can't contradict them. In the slang of debate, they call it knifing. So if you hear people talking, they'll say something like, yeah, we would have gotten a better rank in that round. We took the 4 because we knocked our opening half. And that means you directly contradict them. You say, no, we don't think that this policy will help the poor people at all. We think it will help the university only. That would be a knife, pretty clear knife. But most people aren't really too concerned about that rule. They're mostly concerned about making a good contribution to the debate. Thinking about like that, like here's what we stand for. I'll talk about principles for a second. Here's what we stand for. Once you do that, then we will win the debate based on it. So that's, if you knife, you'll probably. And then the last rule is new matter. Every person in the debate, with the exception of the whips, there are 8 speakers in the debate. With the exception of the last 2, you need to provide some new point or argument in the debate, some new element that has been considered yet. So if you don't provide new matter, the judges look poorly on that. More rules. Each team has to have a line. This is like, basically think about this kind of as writing a paper. You and your partner are advancing a position. Here's what we stand for. Here's what we stand for. We are trying to move the debate forward by saying we stand for this. So whatever it might be, if your topic is something like we should go to Taco Bell, I don't know, some ridiculous debate topic like that, just as an example. You say, our principle is that we should spend very little money and get excellent taste. We think that's the principle you should live your life by. and we feel that going to talk about this principle. Then you might give a couple of reasons why that principle is good, and go from there. So, like I have here on slide 7, I think it is that we're on now. We're going to have broad arguments instead of small ones. And the reason why you should support the motion or go against the motion, whether you're government or opposition, is that it's consistent with your principle. And a good definition of a principle is how do we tell what's good in this society? And that's sort of where we could derive a principle from. So one of the things I tell my debaters to do is think of the best governments in the world and how they would do things. That's a good define principles. So I give you some examples here on slide 8 of what the principles would look like on what's called argument construction, where it says this house believes that university education should be paid for by the state. So I have kind of an example of what the opening government's principle might be, and then what the opening opposition's principle might be. Now they also have to clash, they also have to disagree with each other. So the second speaker from opening government will have to stand up and attack this opening opposition principle in his or her speech. Likewise, the deputy prime minister, the second speaker from opening government, will have to get up and say, look, we don't think this opposition principle makes any sense. We think self-reliance is total garbage. It's a way for wealthy people to feel good about themselves and not have to do their duty to society. And opening opposition and say, we think that self-actualization is not that great. If I am a murderous fiend, psychopath, my self-actualization is to kill as many people as possible. We just don't think that's a very good principle to stand by all the time. Or they can make a more realistic argument and say, we don't think that university is the way to self-actualize. We think it's one of the ways to self-actualize, and it's one that probably shouldn't be funded by the government. It just doesn't work. Okay, so those are some examples of that. And I have a bit on the extension here, which I've talked about a little bit. Extension is just slang for the big turn debate the member of the government, the member of the opposition should provide. That it doesn't have to be new, but it has to definitely be a direction that identifies that team differently from the other teams in the debate. So, you'll look with me at page 10, agreement construction. Principles are easy to identify. When this says principles are easy to identify. This is one of the things that's toughest about this kind of debate, is instead of looking at facts, who has the best facts, who has the best information, the rules of the world competition say you can't use the internet, you can't use any kind of research materials unless you brought them in paper form. So if you brought some magazines or some printouts with you, use that, you're not going to win a debate if you merely refer to facts and say, this is true and this is false. The way you're going to win the debate is on principle, and that's pretty much the way it goes. So on this slide, it tells you, I have this WWGGD. This is kind of a play off of what would Jesus do? What would good governments do? This is the question to ask yourself in the debate. So you get a motion, this house would end the free lunch program. This house believes that businesses should not have to pay any tax if they hire a large percentage of minorities in their population. These are the kind of topics we get. And I guess one of the most terrifying things about topics, I might as well tell you now and scare you, is in this format of debate, the topics that we get, you get 15 minutes before each debate. So you and your partner will have 15 minutes to prepare arguments for that topic. That's all you get. No internet, can't call your friend on the phone, can't call anybody, can't talk to your teammates, you can only talk to your partner. And each debate, the topic changes. The one round you're debating banning nuclear power, the next debate you're arguing whether or not a homosexual couple should be allowed to adopt, whatever the topic might be, they change dramatically. So to prepare for this kind of debate, you really need to have a good understanding of the principles in which good governments would operate, the principles in which governments should operate. So things like state theory, political theory really help you quite a bit. But you don't really need those things to do well. You can just imagine the governments in the world you'd want to live under and what their policies would be. How do they operate? How do they make decisions? And the best states in the world say things like, well, I think that we should always support protecting our citizens. And that's a principle here. Or we think we always should help equalize opportunity in citizens. That's a principle of good governance. And then the last point, the bullet I have here, is best governance world versus the worst places. So you can also derive principles by imagining the governments you'd never want to live under, the places you'd never choose to live. Like, how many people are like, oh, I think I'd like to, I think I'd like to move to, sorry about that. I think I'd like to move to Iran or North Korea today. Nobody said that. Right? People are trying to leave those countries. So you could say, what are the principles that